Stand by, Dr. G.
I'm standing, I'm sitting.
Okay. Stand by, Dr. G. Okay, Dr. G, we are on.
Okay. Welcome to a town hall regarding hybrid reentry. This is for our community, basically, I hope, parents and students. Para servicio de traducción en español, marque 701-802-5152, número de acceso 42777-932, pound. Por favor, mantenga su teléfono en silencio durante la traducción. Gracias. Can we change the screen, and are we connecting so that people don't miss the first part that I'm saying? How can we validate that? Alma, do you know?
Good to go.
For sure?
We are good. Yes, Dr. G.
Okay, thank you. Our last town hall, we had some difficulty and people missed the first few minutes. So I want to begin by letting you know that the hybrid plan that was submitted by the public ed, to the public ed department, approved by the board and agreed to with NEA Santa Fe, had us returning in hybrid in a modified model on October the 15th. Since that time, we've had probably close to 300 requests for medical accommodations. Either, when I say medical, it could be age, a pre-existing condition, having a vulnerable family member at home that would put you at risk if you were working in this environment. Since, as we get closer to reentry, we've heard more and more from staff of their concern about reentry. To modify, and since our plan was submitted, there are two large districts, Albuquerque Public Schools, that is not returning until January. Las Cruces is returning, I believe, somewhat modified for the early grades and some special ed classes. There are other large districts that have opened, like Rio Rancho, and others that plan to in October, like Gadsden and Hobbs, that's about our size, and other districts around the state. However, as we've gotten closer to opening, we've heard from our teachers that they had many concerns and wanted more clarification on safety measures, wanted more clarification on teaching methodologies and whatnot. We have put information in writing. We had a town hall at 4 o'clock. Some of you teachers might be on right now because you're parents as well. Our intent is to ask our faculty and staff who are site-based, who are not administrators, if they would volunteer to come back the second 9 weeks. In lieu of just recommending to the board and asking the PED to not open, that we stay fully remote through the end of December. We know that many families are really experiencing hardship and are concerned about their children, want their children back in school. And we believe that there are faculty and staff that would prefer to teach and come back in person. With that said, we have a tentative agreement with NEA Santa Fe that we will ask staff who is willing to come back on a voluntary basis beginning October 15th through December 30th and see what the staffing looks like. Based on that staffing, if we are able to, we will accommodate as many families as possible that want to return. We know that thus far, between 40 and 60% of our families have a preference to stay on remote learning. So what does it mean if your child comes back in a hybrid model? First of all the children whose families have requested, let me backtrack. Right now, we're only approved to return in hybrid for pre-K through 6th grade. 6th grade only if you're in a K-6 school. If you're a sixth grader in a K-8 school or in a middle school, you would not be eligible to return. It's only pre-K through sixth grade if you're in a K-6 school. Those are the only ones that have been approved for return after Labor Day. When the approval will come for middle and high school is anybody's guess. Some people have speculated that it might be the middle of October, but we don't know. So what would it look like if your child came back instructionally? So we want to talk about that and also talk to you about the safety protocols that we have in place. This information is available on the website, and Mr. Chavez, have the documents that we sent to the staff, are they on the website now, and where could they find them?
They are on the website, and they're on the landing page. When you click on the big green button, it's about halfway down the page. And
On the reentry?
It is on the reentry page, and it is available for viewing.
So one of the things that I want family and students to know is that the public schools are one of the most regulated industries, for lack of a better term, in the state and probably in the country in terms of regulations for safety. And under this COVID conditions, we're even more so. From HVAC systems that have to be inspected by a third party before we're allowed to have students in class or teachers, to how we handle transportation, to food services, any number of things. And so I want to start with, first of all, what would a hybrid model look like when your child returns to school? And Vanessa, would you like to talk about elementary, Ms. Lucero about special education, and Mr. Chavez, middle and high school?
Sure. My name is Vanessa Romero, Associate Superintendent for School Support and Teaching and Learning. So in elementary, we would, of course, look at the students that are face-to-face and coming in and provide small group instruction and support to students there at school. We're looking at also ensuring that students at home, so the days that your children don't attend, there's still synchronous lessons with the classroom teacher on those days that the child is not in class. We are working with principals to identify teachers that would be hybrid and those teachers that would be remote and supporting your children.
And Mr. Chavez?
Yes, I'm Associate Superintendent Larry Chavez, and a little bit about the secondary schools is one I want to remind everybody that it's not all students who are scheduled for that site. It is those that have chosen the hybrid option, one, and two, those students that have chosen the hybrid option would be split into two groups at A and B. So again, it reduces the amount of total students within a classroom and within a site.
So I just want to touch on that, Mr. Chavez, and this is not only for high school, it's for elementary as well. So to be very clear, we've heard from parents, you've already let your schools know, between 40 and 60% want to stay on remote. So take them out of the equation. So if a school has 300 kids and let's say 200 want to come back, only 100 could come back at any one time, 50% of the roster. And by class, it's only 50% of the roster, not capacity. So the PTR, the pupil teacher ratio, the number of students that will be interacting, going to, cafeteria, et cetera, greatly reduced. All right, Mr. Chavez, thank you.
Yes, absolutely. And what does it look like inside the classroom? Well, you'll have that small group of in-person students and you'll have a larger group that are remote. We're trying to provide teachers with a microphone. So when they're wearing their masks, they can have a microphone for those students who are in the remote setting, the ability to listen to the direct instruction that's given. And again, it's very similar to what we're seeing now in our current remote status. The one change is that it is going to be a hybrid, which means we're going to have students on site and students remote learning at the same time.
And so we're starting to see a few questions, and as they pop up, we'll answer them. I'd like to also review some safety protocols. Special education, Miss Lucero.
Hi, I'm Julie Lucero, Executive Director of Special Education. And the work that we've been doing to prepare for reentry is we are considering our self-contained programs back in hybrid. And of course, considering those families that would like to come back, we have several families that don't feel ready for that. So our ratio will be 50% of our rosters, and with teachers and EAs to support. And of course, decisions within students with disabilities will always be made and considered in IEP meetings, but we are working real hard to have this plan ready to go for reentry in October.
And we want to explain roster. So that means if a teacher has on her class load 8 kids, only 4 kids could come back in the A cohort or the B cohort. And if you recall, on a hybrid model, if the children are in an A cohort, and I think it's letters A through L or A through M, would be in the A cohort. They go to school Monday and Tuesday. They're online Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday. The B cohort would go to school Thursday and Friday and would be in online on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday. What will be the protocol if someone in the school is diagnosed with COVID-19? And will all families be notified, even if it was not in their student's classroom? Ms. Het?
That's a really good question. The new PED guide.
Please state your name and your position.
Thank you. My name's Anita Het, and I'm the lead nurse with Santa Fe Public Schools. There is a protocol put out by the Public Education Department, which will define whether or not students in one classroom will be sent home or whether it's the whole school, depending on the number of cases. But yes, we would definitely communicate with all families to notify them of a positive case, but we would do that while also maintaining confidentiality for the person who tested positive.
We do, but just as you know, in maintaining confidentiality, we have been very transparent way before it was required, or districts, even it's not required actually to put out a press release. The information is available on the Department of Department of the Environment. You can list and you can see all the cases. We put out a press release as soon as we have the information about what we've learned on contact tracing, how many people have been quarantined, where we think the case shows us where they may have acquired it, like did they had acquired it at school or in the community. And those have been on our press releases. And so we are very transparent about that. What day will hybrid start? If we go into hybrid, it will start October the 15th. Can you please explain what parents can expect instructionally as far as a hybrid model? How will teachers teach the children in school and at home at the same time? So one of the things that was said earlier, and maybe you didn't pick up, is that if we can accommodate having a teacher paired with a teacher, a hybrid and a remote learning teacher, if we can pair them, then the teacher who's teaching hybrid in person would be teaching just the kids who are in front of them. And the person that's doing the hybrid part remotely would just teach the kids remotely. Please know that this hybrid model is not the Santa Fe Public Schools model. It is a national model that's been adopted across the country and across the state as our way of instructing children during the coronavirus. Now, you guys, my staff, you all talk to the teachers about some of the things that you've put in place to make hybrid learning work and what that might look like. Would you please explain that for our parents tonight?
Sure. We've been doing a lot of work with teachers, professional development, lots of lesson planning across the district.
We've created lessons.
Right, created lessons for teachers to use for 4 weeks. We are now going to start our second round of developing lessons for hybrid. but even the lesson plans that were developed this past 4 weeks were in preparation for hybrid. So it's still rigorous content. We're still providing direct instruction, small group instruction, guided practice. And so we are generating some more lesson plans. We're also creating additional professional development on what hybrid would look like, how teachers can leverage their smart boards, utilize cameras in their room, and ensure that they're using digital tools in a hybrid model.
And anyone else that is familiar with this, I know Ms. Wagner, we tend to put you in the safety niche, but you've also been involved on the CNI side. If you want to add anything, Ms. Lucero, Mr. Chavez, anybody want to add of what parents can expect in a classroom?
Sure, I'll add a few things. So I think it's really good to at least make known that if you start to think about that period of time of direct instruction to begin each segment or each lesson is when that instruction is going to be delivered to all students, remote or hybrid. After that initial direct instruction is when the remote students would have the opportunity to work asynchronously or offline. And at that point, again, the in-class students would work collaboratively with their teachers in person. So again, there's an option for everybody to come back for a whole group closure. And again, maybe following up with those students in the remote setting for any questions or any clarification that needs to be made. So there is an idea of how to be able to provide direct instruction, but also not keeping the kids online the entire segment.
Dr. Garcia, if I can add, as far as students with disabilities, we really want to focus on meeting the IEP minutes and goals. But for those students, specifically those students with autism, really providing the opportunity for social interaction. Those are areas that are really being missed. And of course, those that remain in a remote setting will still be engaged with the teacher in the classroom in the best way possible.
Also, the question was, will students be completing all of their work on their computers when they're on site? And that's the whole point of bringing them back, so that they aren't doing all of their work on computers, that they're doing more hands-on, maybe more. Now, you know, a computer has become like a piece of paper, right? Where people type and do, you know, just like I mean, I see kids with computers in the classroom, but they will be able to interact in groups. They may do more hands-on projects. This is particularly true at the elementary level, where more manipulatives and whatnot, but they would not, I mean, that's the whole point of bringing them back, so they can have in-person instruction, be able to interact, you know, throughout the class period in real time with their teachers. Let's see here. Lots of questions about students not being chosen by the school to return. So right now, if we can come back, and we have the staffing, we are prioritizing students who don't have internet access, students who may have, you know, the parents may have significant issues because of childcare, special education students, but students in special ed classes rather, who may have special needs. Students who do not have remote access. So they would be prioritized. Depending on the availability, then it would be based on remote. My guess is that, you know, we have some schools where 60% of families want remote. And if we're bringing them back in a hybrid model with 50% of roster, we may be able to accommodate everyone, but it really depends on the teacher and staffing availability. We also, based on availability at the secondary level, for example, if we have I'm just making up a course X, and those teachers qualify for an accommodation, we have to choose whether we would bring in a long-term sub or whether it'd be better for that child to be with their teacher remotely while they're in school. Those would be rare circumstances, but that is a real possibility. What if we want our child to go back but was not chosen by the school to return? I mean, we'll do our best to accommodate you if we can. Again, it's on availability of staffing. Any of you staff want to respond to that? Maybe I'm not thinking of something. No? Is that about the best we can do? Ms. Wagner, did you want to say anything? Okay. Will we be allowing middle and high school life skill students back in the buildings in October? Middle and high school, did you get an answer on that yet, Ms. Lucero from the Public Ed Department?
Dr. Garcia, no, but I have reached out and hoping to hear from them soon on guidance specifically for middle and high school high needs students.
Now we're only approved for pre-K through 6th grade. We have not heard yet when there will be approval for middle and high school. It's possible it could be in October, but we haven't heard yet. Where can I get CYFD funded childcare for an 11-year-old who needs one-on-one? I called all providers on New Mexico Kids list. All were for younger kids, or they don't give help to special needs care. What I would recommend, if you have a family member, a friend, or a neighbor who would be willing to provide childcare, you might be able to qualify under the Family, Friends, and Neighbor Care Act. And that information is on our website, again, on Reentry, right? There's information about childcare. So go to the website. If you still need information, Ms. Lucero, is this a special needs student? I would ask them to contact you. And you want to give your email address?
Yes, I'll type that in. My email address is julielucero@sfps.k12.nm.us. It's always confused with J Lucero, so it's full Julie Lucero.
Julie Lucero. Why is it that teachers have not been able to get into schools to get and distribute materials? So we have allowed teachers, they have to request permission to go into school. We're trying to limit exposure. Distribution of materials is a little trickier, but we have distributed workbooks, we've distributed various materials. So I would say if this is being asked by a teacher or by a parent, to please talk to your principal. And if you feel like you're not getting the right answer, you can contact Ms. Romero or Ms. Wagner, Ms. Lucero, Mr. Chavez. Their contact information is online. If you go to the organizational chart, their email addresses are there. I'm confused about this idea of having a second remote teacher. How would that be done without doubling the staff? A second remote teacher. I'm not sure I understand. So if you're in elementary, you would either have an online teacher that you're teaching remotely, right? Or you're going to have a person in front of you when you're on hybrid. So you might have two teachers if you're on hybrid. It is possible that you might just have one teacher. It just depends on the availability of staffing. So I can't tell you it's going to be one model or another. We don't know. It's going to be based on staffing. It wouldn't double staff because if you're on hybrid, you're either in school 2 days a week or online 3 days a week. I hope that answers your question. Anybody else want to try answering that?
Sure. And I think part of it is just looking at teachers collaborating and teaming together. So for example, in a first grade, at a school with maybe 3 teachers in first grade, one teacher would work with all the students that have chosen remote, and then the other 2 teachers would work with the students that chose hybrid. So it's sharing the responsibility between grade levels. And as Dr. Garcia said, there are some schools with only 1 teacher at a school at a grade level. So it might be the teacher having both hybrid and remote students.
And if that particular teacher has had an accommodation, there may not be an option if we can't find someone else to cover for you to come to school in a hybrid model. A lot of this we're dependent on staffing. Right now, we've had 300 requests for accommodations. I think about 200 are classroom teachers. Will the parents have a choice after the 15th of October if they want their child to return back to school? And can they remain remote? If you want to remain remote for the entire year, you obviously have that option. If parents have a choice, okay, and if you want to come back, it depends on staffing. We have to have the appropriate staff. We feel philosophically that your child would be better off with their teacher on remote than in person with a long-term sub. And I think we still feel that way, that they're better off with their teacher, even if it is remote, than in person with a substitute teacher. But again, we're still looking at availability of long-term subs. Why is Santa Fe High School volleyball practicing and not other activities? I think I see a question in your future, Mr. Chavez, like right now.
Absolutely. So Santa Fe High School volleyball, along with some other programs that are scheduled to participate in the fall, are starting to practice. They're all in accordance with DOH regulations, any state and health protocols and safety measures, but also approved by the New Mexico Activities Association and the Public Education Department. We have started to reintroduce other activities and other athletic teams starting next week. So we are slowly starting to transition back all the activities outside the school day, along with other athletic teams.
How often is staff getting tested for COVID, and how fast do those test results come back? Most testing is taking 5 to 7 days to result. Ms. Het?
So we're going to be doing random testing or surveillance testing. We're not going to be doing it ourselves. We're going to be sending 5% of staff at each school site that is actually physically on site working for testing at the local public health office. I'm not sure what their turnaround time is, but I know initially there probably will be a little bit of a backlog while they're learning the process of doing it so frequently, because they're going to handle all of the ones for our district. I've seen some test results coming back in 3 days. We still don't have rapid testing. We're hoping that we can get that in the state as soon as possible. But right now we're still at the mercy of the labs.
What about shared manipulatives and the realistic ability of sanitation? Who would like to take that?
Oh, I can speak to that. In elementary school, kids do need manipulatives, hands-on things. We are working with principals to communicate with teachers about creating these bags of manipulatives for individual students so that kids are not sharing in the classroom. So we realize that's something that's needed, and we are working so that each child has their own bag of manipulatives, their own crayons, all of their supplies.
Have you measured the classrooms to ensure that 50% of rostered students can maintain 6 feet distance while in class? So keep in mind that it's not going to be 50% of rostered students, because we have 40 to 60% of families that don't want their child to come back to school, okay, for this school year. So it's going, and then it's 50% of rostered students at any one time. They are working, Ms. Wagner, Mr. Romero, their teams are working with principals and site staff to ensure that there is that we're able to accommodate them with the required distancing requirements. Ms. Wagner, you want to elaborate on that?
Superintendent Garcia, I'm Christy Wagner, Deputy Superintendent. We'll be working with individual principals. Actually, we've started working with individual principals to determine how to maximize their school building based on the number of students they anticipate returning. So some classroom assignments may temporarily change to a physical space that is larger and can accommodate the students scheduled to return. In addition, all classroom spaces, all instructional spaces will be marked for 6 feet of distance. If there are rostering issues or capacity issues, we'll work those out on a site-by-site basis. But we've had the opportunity to learn from other school districts who are already in operation. And you can expect to see some of the larger classes being held in spaces we typically thought of using for library, art, music, other subjects that have larger classroom spaces.
How will recess and lunch be handled? Why don't you do lunch first, and then we can talk about recess.
Sure. Recess and lunch again will be customized to accommodate individual principals, their school enrollment, their schedules, and their needs. So schools with just a generally larger population and more free lunch provisions and more meals served will have extended schedules to reduce the amount of students in the cafeteria. Everything will be socially distanced. Tables will be organized in a manner inside and outside to keep students apart from one another, and the traffic flow will accommodate all the social distancing protocols. The same sort of criteria will be used in the cafeterias as used in classroom to keep students together in a little pod of students. So your first grade student can be expected to sit with their classmates at their assigned table, even though they'll continue to be socially distanced. For recess, principals are looking at strategies for assigning zones to particular classrooms or pods of kids. So again, students will go outside, perhaps at the same time, but one group might be assigned to play at the swings, another might be assigned to play on the climber, another group might be assigned to play in an open area. And then those areas will be disinfected in between use of the next group. So it's really through an organized system of assigning classroom pods and cohorts of kids from like classrooms to travel through these two areas together and be in assigned groups, in assigned tables, maintaining social distance.
Anybody want to add to that? Would you talk about outdoor spaces and for both instruction and for eating?
Sure. For every school in Santa Fe, we've assessed the capability to have outdoor seating for lunch. Again, with a lesser number of students returning to school and the A-B cohorts, we'll spread out seating or accommodate seating inside and outside for lunch under shaded structures outside. And we believe these shade structures can also be used for outdoor learning, classroom projects, an additional space to go learn. We also believe that outdoor learning will happen fairly organically by site. So some teachers might choose to use their school garden or a corner of the playground or the athletic field, maybe even a courtyard to expand learning out of doors. And there's ample furnishings to accommodate that. So we can, make classrooms outside where there aren't, and we can take advantage of shade structures and outdoor areas already designed for that function.
Anybody want to add to that? Okay. The South Side has significantly more new cases than anywhere else in Santa Fe. Will that be taken into account when or if the schools open? So right now, and Ms. O'Brien or Ms. Het, my understanding, right, is that the PED and DOH designate an entire school district as a red, yellow, or green, based on all the data, all the modeling that they do. They do not designate schools as red, yellow, or green, or zip codes. Anything you want to elaborate on that?
That's my understanding as well, Dr. Garcia. Hi, everybody. I'm Sue O'Brien, the Director of Student Wellness with the schools. That's my understanding as well.
Is PED mandating that Santa Fe open to hybrid teaching? Every district had to submit a plan. Our plan was approved with us coming back in hybrid in October the 15th. Our change in plan will require approval by the PED if we do change, and also from the board. I'm a parent working from home and there's a high level of traffic on the internet. Are you working with the local utility companies? Mr. Weaver, Dr. Weaver, can you put in a response, or can you speak, please?
Yes, Dr. Garcia, can you hear me?
Yes.
Perfect. My name is Dr. Neil Weaver. I'm the Executive Director of Digital Learning for Santa Fe Public Schools. And to answer the question, yes, we have noticed, just like with Santa Fe, worldwide there is a high level of internet traffic, which is impacting our ability to be online. We are working with the city and our local internet service providers. We're working with, we have hotspots that we're able to provide to students who don't have internet. So there isn't one answer for ensuring that students are provided access, but we are trying to align our work under, through multiple responses.
Thank you. See if there's another question. When will staffing decisions be finalized? How much lead time before October 15th for planning purposes for teachers and parents? So we intend to notify staff, ask them to give us a response of their intent to volunteer, so that we can look at the staffing based on accommodations and people available to teach by Wednesday. The team will have to work, the supervisors. There's a couple behind the scenes that are also helping us that supervise the schools, and they will work with the principals and HR to look at staffing and what we can offer our parents. Again, remember that we have to get approval from the board. We would take this to the board on October the 1st and then take it to the PED to see if it will be approved. I hope that it will be approved as soon as possible, but this is, things have changed. It looked like people were okay with the plan to come back in a modified hybrid October 15th. It's become very evident that more and more staff are concerned about coming back, and it's a real thing. If their concerns, and we have to address it. What might be a rough timeline on phasing in the upper grades? We have no idea. That is up to the public education department. Some people have guessed that it might be mid-October, but we don't know. And again, if our plan is based on volunteers, if we don't have the staffing, we would only be able to, we would prioritize probably seniors and students who do not have internet access, special education students at the high school. Will there be a high school swim team at Santa Fe High School?
Yes, absolutely. We have not canceled any sports or activities at this point. The schedules have been moved back slightly, so they are updated on our website. If you go to Santa Fe Public Schools website and go under the athletics and activities webpage, you'll find all the new dates there. So right now, no athletic team or activities have been canceled.
Will parents who work full-time with those children be given priority? And we will do our best to prioritize parents that have childcare issues, children, first of all, that don't have connectivity. They have to remain a priority. Special students with special needs. However, again, it will be based on staffing. If my child goes back into hybrid, but it's not a good fit, do I have the choice to pull my child out to remote learning again? I mean, you always have the option. My hope is that we'll have the staffing. I think we will, to be able to accommodate it. Does anyone else see something I'm not thinking about on that one? Okay. I am curious as to how staff will determine what is a COVID case, a cold or the flu, as flu and cold season will be kicking off in mid-October. The protocols are very strict regardless, whether it's in the summer and there's no flu that we know of circulating, or during the winter when we have flu season, which really kicks in earnest around December, January. We have very strict protocols for everything from HVAC systems to filters to air purification to how we serve food to how kids get on the bus to how we have them in the classroom. Hand washing protocols, hand sanitization protocols, masks, PPE. Everything is very regulated, and it will be strict from the onset. It's not going to be strict for these months and a little less in these lesser months. We are so highly regulated. And all of that information is online. And how do we identify what a COVID case is? We're not identifying it. If you have symptoms, we don't want you in school. We don't want you at work. There are checklists, and we're asking parents, and we can go over all of that if you would like. COVID is not determined by the district. COVID is determined by a test. Any symptoms that resemble a cold or the flu or COVID or a stomach bug or food poisoning or just general malaise, don't come to school. We will send you home and ask you to get tested. Right? But the only thing I can think of that you wouldn't get sent home to get tested is if you came to school with a hangnail. Right now, that does not seem to be a COVID-related illness. But I mean, the laundry list is long, from fever to sore throat to, stomach issues, coughing. The list is quite comprehensive. And that doesn't mean you have COVID. That just means you can't be in school. The health folks, want to add anything to that, wellness?
I would just ask that parents do keep their kids home when they are experiencing any of those symptoms, and also make sure that you have communicated with the school district or with the school your current phone number and contact information in case your child does become ill at school. We would want them to be picked up as soon as possible. So please ensure that we have current contact information on file for you.
And do not send your child to school if they have, they just have the sniffles. It's probably allergies. Do not send them to school if they appear to be sick. And we don't want them coming to school having taken fever reduction medication. Please, please, please do not send them to school. When will we know if there will be enough teachers willing to return to the classroom in the hybrid model? So if we give teachers till noon Wednesday to let their schools know, I'm asking my team, do you think we'll know by Friday, or will we need until Monday to be able to for the principals to let their families know how many we can accommodate? What's your guess, guys?
I would think it's going to be closer to a Monday. That way we can make sure that we have accurate numbers on both sides.
Which would be the 28th of September. Keep in mind that the board would have to approve it, that change in plan, and we would have to hear from the PED. My guess is that it most likely would be approved, but I can't guarantee that. But you would have a good sense that we would not be returning in hybrid by the first part of next week. What can we expect during recess? Our children are going to be able to play together and get the socialization they need?
I can address that. Yes, we want our students to socialize, but of course, keeping the social distance of 6 feet apart. If they have equipment that they're playing with, making sure that all that is cleaned and disinfected before, and having designated balls or jump ropes for a particular classroom so that they're not sharing with other cohorts of kids. But we want them to socialize. But yes, keeping in mind that students still have to be, wearing their masks and socially distanced.
How available are you all, and who do we contact for complaints and input? I can tell you pretty much on my team, people are available probably from 7 in the morning till 7, 8 in the evening, which isn't that good for them, but for sure during work hours. If you go to our website, do you know where they can find the organizational chart where they can get your email address? I know it's on the website, and you can get, if you go who we are, staff, Larry, maybe you can tell them. If you can put in the email in the chat, I don't know if they can see it. They probably can't see our chat. So my email is vcgarcia. All of us are at sfps.k12.nm.us for special ed. I think she already said, Julie Lucero.
Yes.
For issues, what's yours, Anita?
Email is ahet@sfps.k12.nm.us.
We're all at sfps.k12.nm.us. I'm VC Garcia. Ms. Wagner, Deputy Superintendent.
My email address is kjanda@sfps.
Ms. O'Brien, student wellness, social emotional well-being.
My email is sueobrien@sfps.k12.nm.us. Sue O'Brien, all one word, Sue O'Brien.
Facilities issues, concerns, safety issues, Mr. Romero.
Hi, I'm Gabe Romero. I'm the Director of Operations. My email is gromero@sfps.k12.nm.us. You can find all these contact informations if you go to the homepage and look under departments.
That's what I was asking, where they can find it. And Larry Chavez is listed under?
Yeah, HILCHAV as in Victor EZ at sfps.k12.nm.us. And when you go to the Santa Fe Public Schools web page, in the upper right-hand corner, it says, "Who are we?" You'll find the organizational chart listed under that tab.
Okay. Let's see here. Will remaining remote affect our lottery placement? No, it will not. Your lottery placement is where you're at for going into a school. If you have siblings in one school and one gets sick, are they all supposed to stay home or not? If it's for COVID, yes, right, Ms. Het?
Yes, if they have tested positive for COVID, everyone in the household should stay home. If they're just, if it's something that the doctor is treating them for that they know is not COVID, then no, they don't have to stay home.
As long as they don't have symptoms. Somebody asked a while ago, and I lost the question about if one child got to come and the other one didn't. We are trying to keep siblings together. Middle and high school, it becomes a little more difficult, but we are trying to address that if we're able to accommodate them. When we do go back to school hybrid, will the AB process schedule be the same at the elementary school? The same, I don't know what that means. Will be at the same, I mean, I don't know what, I don't know that question, what they mean by that question. Somebody want to try?
Maybe it's referring to keeping siblings on the same cohort. So if you have an elementary child and maybe a middle school child, yes, trying to keep kids on the same schedule. Maybe that's.
I don't know, it's not related. I don't know. It says when we go back to school hybrid, will the A and B process schedule be the same at the elementary school? The hybrid model is the hybrid model, whether we are in middle school or high school or elementary. And that is that the A cohort is in school Mondays and Tuesdays. Everybody is remote on Wednesdays and Thursdays. And the B cohort is in school on Thursday and Friday. And that's true pre-K through 12th grade. Will outdoor learning, eating be used once it gets cold?
Superintendent Garcia, I think that, of course, we'll be reasonable about outdoor seating and only use it when it's comfortable, have it become optional as the seasons change. But I anticipate that our weather will be mild enough that we'll be able to take advantage of being outside for a good deal of time.
Do you have any information about how many teachers are willing to go back into hybrid? I don't right now. We will know more soon, but I don't know the number. I know quite a few teachers have concerns, but it's hard to tell what, if those that we're not hearing from are, okay with going back. So I really don't know. If a child isn't feeling well and is to be kept home, I'd assume it would be required for more than just one day, being that the symptoms may be delayed. Are the days home considered absent or remote? The child is participating remotely, then they're considered to be in school. If they are sick and not participating, then it would be an excused absence as it is now. Will kids with an IEP or have an autism diagnosis take priority to getting hands-on learning, Ms. Lucero?
Yes, we are going to prioritize our self-contained classrooms, which are our high needs students. And of course, looking at IEPs to determine that as well.
I think we've answered this. If families begin hybrid and then decide it's not going to work out, can they return to being remote? I would think so. I mean, I would imagine that we can accommodate you. The only reason we wouldn't is if we had a major staffing issue, but I think it can be handled. Anything else? We're waiting for some questions. Ms. Wagner, Mr. Romero, would you like to talk about some of the safety protocols we have in place?
Sure. Dr. Garcia, we wanted to talk about some of the things that we've done inside our facilities to make sure that they stay clean and safe. One of those right offhand is we hired an additional 41 custodians to make sure we can disinfect effectively while school's ongoing and after hours. Also bought disinfecting machines, and we have a third-party vendor that we put in place just in case we need extra help if we have to disinfect a large portion of a school, that sort of thing. Just going on, we talked about, I don't know if we talked about, we put sneeze guards or plexiglass screens in a multitude of areas. In the front office and the reception area, that'll be the first people would notice that we have those protective screens for staff interacting with parents or students. We also have them in the classroom, and we have them at administrative stations.
And in the restrooms.
And also partitions in the restrooms to separate sinks and other areas. Also wanting to use installing bottle fillers so that we don't use the drinking fountains, which are much less sanitary. Of course, we talked about the canopies we purchased for outdoor eating and classroom space, and a lot of hand sanitizer stations throughout the sites, each site. So that's a few of the things we've done. I can talk about HVAC systems, but I think you covered that already.
Correct. I mean, everything that is required, all the disinfectants are EPA approved. Every piece on the checklist required by the PED, required by DOH are there. And in many cases, we have exceeded what is required to keep our children and our faculty and staff safe. Mr. Chavez, could you please explain how classroom transitions will work for middle school students?
Yes, as we know, elementary schedules, middle school schedules, and high schools are very different. The Environmental Protection Agency and DOH have noted that the use of hand sanitizers by students who are entering and exiting classrooms are recommended. Also, by limiting the transition, the amount of time outside the classroom and in hallways is a practice that we'll put in place. So with those two, plus disinfecting classrooms when they're not in use is a safe practice that will continue to issue out that type of guidance to our schools.
If teachers in my son's school do not volunteer or they have accommodations, then hybrid will not be a possibility for my child. I mean, it just depends. If perhaps it might be a combo class, if one or two teachers decided that they would be willing to come back. It really depends on staffing. So it's not a black and white answer. If somehow we had a very experienced substitute that maybe was a retired teacher that was subbing, that would be willing to come in long-term, that might be a possibility. But yes, it does limit options if we don't have the staffing. So again, it is availability of staffing, and we are required to provide accommodations if people are over 65 or have medical conditions. They not automatically, they have to provide proof, but are entitled to an accommodation.
Can I add something before we move on to the next question, Dr. Garcia, since we
Of
are
course.
talking to students and parents, that it is a requirement of all students to wear a mask at school, arrive with a mask. That way we make sure that everybody in our community is aware of that.
So thank you. It says, will there be, you say that kids will be able to do more paper pencil activities, manipulatives, and when in person. How would teachers interact with those materials? Everyone should be staying 6 feet apart, yes? Ms. Romero?
You're correct. We don't want sharing of materials. We want to make sure teachers are safe as well. And working with teachers, ensuring that students have their own bag of manipulatives. If it's a writing sample, we can still look at that from a distance if they're writing in their notebooks. But yes, we want our teachers to be safe as well.
But the question is, how would teachers interact with those materials? So they could have a set of manipulatives on their desk, right? Or that they would demonstrate.
Oh yeah, teachers would have their own, but then as I said earlier, students would also have their own manipulatives, their notebooks, so that they're not working or sharing with other students, and the teacher would not be touching them.
So there are demonstrations that they can do without actually touching the child's manipulative. Anybody want to add to that? Will there be after-school programs available for students that choose to return to class? There will be after-school programming, but it will be remote. It's my understanding. Again, we're still in the middle of a pandemic, trying to limit exposure. So it would be remote. And also we're limiting the number of people that will be on site. So parents will not be allowed to be on site. Volunteers will be supporting students remotely. So we're really trying to limit exposure for kids when they come back. Have you been reaching out to states where hybrid models have been in place for more than a month? No, we have not. We have, quite a bit on it. We've been reaching out more to people in state that we've had people go out to go visit what's happening in Rio Rancho. We're going to be watching the numbers. But at the end of the day, we have to make a decision for what's right for Santa Fe. And we also have to consider our employees. And without quality teachers, there's a tremendous teacher shortage. We also have to consider that we have in New Mexico, the 4th largest aged workforce. And I forgot what percent of our teachers are over the age of 60. We have a large number that are over the age of 60. And with that come, conditions that might make you more vulnerable to a COVID-19 infection. So all of this has had to be taken into consideration as we make these decisions. The hybrid model, just so you know, again, is not a Santa Fe model or a state model. It is a national model. Let's see if we have any more questions. If a child does have sniffles and the parent decides to keep the child home, can the child join remote learning for that day? I would imagine so. Because the teacher has her hybrid students, I would imagine they could, if they felt up to it. Do we have any other questions? Why has Santa Fe not allowed special ed students to return to the classroom when the governor and the PED have stated that this is allowable, and other districts have provided 5-to-1 or 1-to-1 services to students? Because the PED also required that you had to have a union agreement on your plan, and the agreement that we were able to come to with our union and the district was to be fully remote for the first 9 weeks and return in a modified hybrid beginning October 15th. That plan was approved by the board. Are you mandating that any child who has stayed home sick get tested for COVID before returning? We are following the guidelines that are provided to us by the Department of Health and the Public Ed Department. Ms. Het, do you want to address that?
If the student is homesick and they are displaying the symptoms of COVID, it is recommended that they do go get tested for COVID and stay home until their symptoms resolve and follow the guidelines that PED and the Department of Health have laid out. If a student has a chronic medical condition and the nurse has documentation that it could be related to that chronic medical condition, then that may change depending on what the symptoms are. But ultimately, we really want to keep all sick children home, and yes, possibly test them all if they are out sick displaying COVID-like symptoms.
Is it possible to have news updated as it becomes available on the Santa Fe Public Schools website? Absolutely. We do our best to do that. If you go to that big green button, is it dated, Mr. Chavez, where they can see what's been updated in each section?
No, it's not. And we need to make that.
Yeah, I
note
thought
of
we
the
were supposed
update.
to show the date when we update, put new information on. So that they know this is from this date, because some of the information does become dated. We also do our best to communicate on Facebook and social media. So if as soon as we have a decision or what we're looking at recommending to the board, we will communicate broadly with families. Are we ever going to get personal belongings from last year back before staff and kids repopulate the classrooms? Mr. Salvidres and Ms. Wagner.
Superintendent Garcia, we're really depending on staff being back in their classrooms full time to sort and organize those materials, and then principals will indicate to families how to claim those items. At this point in time, we've released items to students moving to another school or out of town. And I don't know if Mr. Salvidres has anything to add to that, but we really need folks on hand to organize that distribution.
I am Mario Salvidres, Executive Director of Safety and Security. And there have been some schools who have already gone in with their staff. I can vouch for Gonzalez School, who have put all the belongings together for students and called in parents on small little groups to come and pick up their items. So we can facilitate that as long as it's an organized fashion, that we can adhere to the orders of the governor and we can move forward.
Okay, thank you. Why would there not be staff taking the kids' temp before entering the building? Seems like this would catch any sickness or need to quarantine a whole class or school. Ms. Het?
The CDC does not recommend temperature checks, mass temperature checks. They're not reliable to indicate a student is sick. I mean, obviously, if they are running a fever, we want them to stay home. We don't want them coming to school. So the idea is to have parents keep their kids home if they have any of the symptoms, which include a fever, and that way they're not coming to school sick. And that would eliminate the need to screen them for a fever. Now, if a student develops symptoms during the day, of course, we do have the infrared non-touch thermometers that we could use to check their temperature. But we are asking parents to screen children before sending them to school so that they are not getting on the bus or coming to school with a fever.
Is the state concerned with lawsuits for not providing for students with special needs? I think what has to be comparable for what is being provided for students in general ed. If students show regression, there has to be compensatory education provided. And now if we were bringing general ed students back and not special education students back, that would be a different story. Right now, students with special needs are being prioritized. However, there has to be comparability of program and then compensatory education provided. If students show regression, right? Or if the needs were not met. So if a student needed to get, I'm just going to make up a number, 50 hours of speech therapy, and they only got 25, we would need to provide that additional 25 hours. This is my understanding. Ms. Lucero, is there anything I may have missed on that one?
No, of course, we're always concerned about all of our students, and with students with disabilities, once we determine what has been lost for each student, and we will definitely provide compensatory services. Now, when that will take place, it just depends on what the situation with COVID looks like. It could be the summer. If we can do it any earlier, we will, but we definitely have every intention to provide those services.
Absolutely. Thank you. Will winter break and spring break still happen on the normal dates? Yes. Are buses being used? And if so, who is monitoring the kids to ensure that the children are keeping masks on? Ms. Wagner?
Superintendent Garcia, we will be providing transportation to students who are in need in returning in the hybrid model. They will be as distanced as we can, depending on demand, and maybe actually seated with other students, again, depending on demand. And drivers will be requiring that masks are worn and monitoring behaviors just like they do any other behaviors when we're running our bus routes. They're trained to watch for squabbles and fights and conflicts while maintaining safety on the roadway. So that's just something that they will be having heightened awareness around.
Will we have to buy school supplies for hybrid days? We are working on a school supply drive. We also have supplies in the classroom that were not utilized. So I think it will be minimal, correct, Ms. Romero? And you've been heading that effort, I believe.
Yes, it would be minimal. And I know that many schools, parents were asking about school supplies in a remote setting, and we have said very minimal, your pencils and crayons and a notebook, and that would still remain true in hybrid, very minimal.
My son has autism and won't respond to online education. What do you advise, Ms. Lucero?
Dr. Garcia, what I would advise, if you haven't already reached out to the teacher, do so. And then also please reach out to me and I will get you in contact with my autism specialist so that we may be able to come up with some ideas. We can also have an IEP at any time to come up with different strategies or different approaches.
Okay, let's see, do we have any more questions? Are students with IEP supposed to get their full minutes of service remote or hybrid? If so, who do I contact to make sure my student is getting the right service? Ms. Lucero.
So right now we are implementing a plan. The IEP stays in place, but during remote learning, we have what is called an ICLP to determine what services will be provided during remote. And the reason we're doing that is because the model doesn't look exactly the same as if we were in full reentry. Now, what minutes are determined during a meeting, so parents have a voice in that, what works for you. I have some parents that don't want a lot of remote time. I have others that want us to try to match the IEP as close as possible. So if you have not had that meeting with your team, please reach out to me and I'll make sure that you get that scheduled.
I muted myself because of my doggy wanted to contribute on that question. What are the criteria, the triggers for returning to full virtual? If COVID cases increase at an individual school or in the district, how would you make that decision? Well, the PED actually makes that decision for us, and and Department of Health, based on their modeling, they will let us know what our designation is. We have to be green in order to be allowed to return in Is green hybrid or orange hybrid? Can't remember now. Yellow. Is green coming back fully, or is it hybrid?
Let me check in the reentry plan.
I think the orange is hybrid. I think red is full remote. And I think green is like the virus is all gone and everybody's back to school and life is back to normal. So I think when we see a lot of orange, it's you're allowed to come back in hybrid. But while Mr. Chavez checks, and the criteria is based on a bunch of modeling. It has to do with percent, rate of transmission, number of deaths, hospital capacity, testing capacity. I can't remember all the factors that go into the state model. It should be on the Department of Health's website, the criteria for that. Any other questions? We've got about 5 minutes left. What are the, okay. There are further comments, but no questions. Okay. We'll be sure to follow up on your comments. We just want you to know that we recognize the importance of students being in school and how much students are missing social and emotionally. I know Ms. Bryan and her team have done quite a bit in that regard to address that this year. But we know that we all need that human contact too. And we recognize that it's difficult for students. I see you, Mr. Chavez.
Yep.
Go ahead.
So green is full reentry.
Yeah.
Orange is hybrid. Red is full remote.
Right. And so I know at the last session, people were saying, well, there's still a lot of orange for Santa Fe. But that is hybrid model is orange. But that designation for the entire district, let's say we were in hybrid and we had more cases or a transmission rate went above 1.05, they probably would contact us and say, sorry, you're going back to full remote. Correct, Ms. Heck? So it's not really our decision in terms of when you move from red, yellow to green. Well, I want to thank you all for joining us. We will do our best to communicate with you as quickly as we can about our plans. And we thank you for participating tonight. Again, if you have any questions, please feel free to contact us and please frequent our website and check on the green reentry button. You will find updated information there on a regular basis. Have a good evening and thank you for choosing the Santa Fe Public Schools. Good night.